Mike Greenberg here, and delighted that you are there and have chosen to get up with us here on ESPN on a Monday morning after a Sunday night that so many of us have been waiting for eagerly for a long time, and that on some level Michael Jordan has been waiting decades for. What a night it was. The highly anticipated documentary The Last Dance premiered last night. It's ESPN's 10-part series chronicling Michael Jordan and surrounding primarily the final year of his 6 championship run, the 97-98 Chicago Bulls. But if you watched last night, the first 2 episodes, you are aware that they focused on so many other things. And while everything does center ultimately around that last year, that last championship, that last dance, there is everything you could ever possibly want to know about Michael Jordan and much, much more. Now, we have Jay Williams. I'll just be completely honest with you. Jay Williams is standing by, ready to go. We're having technical issues getting to him, so he will be live with us in 1 second. But let me bring Marcus and Dan into the program here to begin, because I awoke this morning to a text exchange between these two guys that somehow I wound up on that went on forever. And I just want to give you a taste of the conversation, because I think this is what's going on around America today. Dan, who's clearly poking the bear, texts, "Imagine watching this and thinking LeBron is better." To which Swagoo responds, "LOL, I knew it was coming. They'll make one about LeBron when we're older and someone will say the same thing." Dan was not backing down. Stop. Just freaking stop. And by Dan's standards, that's pretty strong language. And it would go on from there. Marcus would tweet, "My mind not changing, bro." And I'm telling you right now that this did not stop there. Dan, you're too smart for this. And Marcus would go on again. The two of them would go back and forth throughout this. At some point, I could open up a scroll that would show the entirety of the thing. But Dan Orlovsky, you obviously saw the discussion that I had here with Marcus late last week. Why did you decide to poke the bear last night? What did you take away from this thing last night?
Well, the poking the bear was just too easy, Greeny. There's no way that anyone in their right mind sits there and watches that last night and thinks that that's not the best player to ever play. I mean, I had never owned a pair of Jordans before, and then 11:05 last night, I'm on the internet scrolling for Jordans. Like, how can I find my first pair of Jordans? I mean, there's so many remarkable moments, and when guys like Bob Knight and James Worthy are calling, and Magic Johnson are calling Jordan the greatest ever before he actually done anything. I love Marcus. He's one of my best friends. I cannot let a person who I think is that smart say something that stupid anymore. So I have to fight him on it.
Go ahead, Swagoo, and then I'm told Jay Will is ready. We'll keep you guys around. Go ahead, Marcus.
Gee, you know what my initial thought was? My initial thought watching that last night when Dan texted me was, I can see why everybody says Michael Jordan's the GOAT, because it's the first time that the NBA had seen that type of athleticism, that type of fire, and a skill set like that. I just don't think it's uncommon anymore. I think this is the first time the NBA has seen LeBron James as well in his makeup. So there will be stories told, like I responded to Dan last night, about LeBron in the same way. And our kids will say the same thing. How can somebody watch this and say LeBron James is not the best basketball player ever? I just happen to be way ahead of the curve. I got ultimate respect for Jordan. And by the way, I've owned a lot of Jordans before. I've owned 100 pair of Jordans. So I have respect. And it's not to put MJ in a negative light. You can't when it comes to basketball. I'm just partial, and my preference is to think that LeBron James is the GOAT of basketball. I'm not backing down from that. I don't give a damn what nobody say.
You know what's interesting is that at some point in life, we all become our fathers, and this is that moment for me. What I'm trying to express to anyone listening to this conversation is that if you didn't see Michael Jordan play, I can't explain it to you any other way, except you can't do anything better than he played basketball. And this is in no way to take away from LeBron James. And look, the downside of these kinds of arguments, which took place on my Twitter page in my absence yesterday, when I just harmlessly tweeted, "I've seen the documentary, you're gonna love it," and in my mind, it proves Michael's the greatest player of all time. And 14,000 people started arguing about it almost immediately thereafter. My credentials as a LeBron fan are intact. He's on my Mount Rushmore. I consider him the 4th greatest player that ever lived, but Michael Jordan is number 1. Guys, stay with me, because I'm told we do have Jay Williams ready to go. And obviously, look, you all understand we're doing the best we can with the technology as best we can here. There he is, my man Jay Will, whom we've been waiting for all morning long. Jay was drafted by the Chicago Bulls 3 years after Michael departed. He had Michael Jordan's locker when he came in as the 2nd pick in the NBA draft. So, Jay Will, what was your primary take take away from watching the first 2 episodes last night?
I think there's just so many layers, Greeny, to this story that, I've been able to pay attention to, but I didn't know the nuances of the story. And one of the personal, relationships I have in the story is with Jerry Krause. Jerry Krause and I were really, really good friends. And he used to talk to me about some of the mistakes that he had made in managing that relationship with Michael Jordan. Now, look, I'm never comparing myself to Michael Jordan, but I think the relationship that I have between Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause, I would hear these guys talk about, how to build up a winning culture. And that came from communication. And there were just so many egos that were in that locker room. And I guess that was my takeaway last night is that, I knew a completely different Jerry Krause, and I also knew the softer side of Jerry. So was there a competitive side of him? Yes. But there's also Phil Jackson wanted to get paid the biggest money he did. You had this issues with Scottie Pippen and their battles. And it's just interesting to see how those nuances imploded essentially compared to when I came in there. You just felt those hallways were just forever haunted by the uncharted standard of excellence that no team could ever reach. And you felt that density in the atmosphere every time you stepped through them inside the United Center.
That's extremely well said. I knew Krause very well 25 years ago. And what I will say is, A, it is a travesty that he didn't get into the Hall of Fame while he was still alive. He was inducted posthumously. That is a disgrace to him, and it is a shame for his family because he absolutely deserved it. Much of the negativity, however, that was aimed at him, he definitively brought on himself. And there just isn't any debating that. And it's interesting for me to hear you say, because this is not a conversation I had the chance to have with him, that he recognized that after the fact, because he did not strike me as someone who would have understood that. He was so standoffish, he was so stubborn that he felt like a guy who was going to stand his ground. So you're telling me that years later, he talked about having made mistakes in those relationships.
Yeah, Grady, he just talked about how he could have done things better and that he had learned from his time being with Jordan and Pippen and Phil Jackson and managing not only their egos, but more importantly, his own ego. So yeah, and those teams, man, back then, look, I had to deal with Corvette. I remember coming up and parking in the same spot Michael Jordan parked in and just having that feeling of how special that team was. And look, I heard you guys originally talking about, LeBron James and Michael Jordan. I will say this, like, to each their own. Michael Jordan lifted you, but it was almost like in battle. And if you weren't willing to pull yourself out of the trenches, Michael Jordan would take his foot, step it on your helmet, and reach his hand to the next person that wanted to fight their way out. So it was either get on my standard of excellence and start trying to achieve what I want to achieve, or if you don't, I don't got time for you. And that paid dividends. That's how they won 6 championships.
Let's work our way back towards that conversation again here with one of the best players in the league, one of the best players of all time, and that is Kevin Durant. Jay, I know that you talked to KD on the boardroom about MJ and the Last Dance documentary. We pulled out a little piece of that conversation that I think will be fascinating in the context of last night. Here's what KD said.
He can adapt his game to anything. He would fit in as the best player in the league. Like, that's what he would be. And, I feel like he'll have more possessions to do more things, but there's also more athleticism in his game. There's more length in his game, but, it's also more space for MJ to go to work. So, we'll never know, but for sure, he's a masterful basketball player, like we've been saying. His skill level is unmatched. So, of course, he'll do numbers in this league today.
So let's talk about that conversation. KD saying Michael Jordan might even be better if he played in the league today. Jay Will, what did you think of that?
Well, look, we started digging in stats in that segment with KD, and I recognized that the best shooting percentage Jordan had, I think, was 96-97 from the three-point line, which is 42.7% from the line. He took his second highest total of his career in three-point shot attempts at around 275. Just to give you perspective, the highest he ever took was 280. The highest that Stephen Curry has ever taken was 886. Okay, so Jordan, career 32.3 3-point percent shooter. I think he could have worked on that aspect of his game. And look, that was the only thing. We literally itemized Greeny, all of his attributes, and every attribute that Jordan had, from ball handling to mid-range jump shooting to competitive to IQ to vision. Everything was either a 1 or a 0, ranking like 1 being the best, 0 obviously being above the best. The only thing that was subpar was his 3-point shooting. But in today's game, if Jordan had acclimated to this style of play, yeah, he would have been probably the best player in the league. The only person I could see actually defending Jordan is Kawhi Leonard, when Kawhi Leonard is healthy, and Kawhi Leonard is load managing, and Jordan never load managed. So yes, I do agree with Kevin Durant that Jordan would be probably the most prolific scorer in the history of the game, even if he were playing today, because the amount of possessions are unlimited.
He would be even more prolific, candidly. You just said the most important thing. Michael would have played all 82 games. You never know. Whoever was guarding him might have chosen that night to load manage. And the other piece of it that I will say here is that episodes 3 and 4 will come next week. And episode 4 focuses on the bad boy Pistons. And what you will see, for those who do not know, is that every member of that team would have been suspended for the season for practically everything they did on every possession of those games. If Michael Jordan played in a game where it was refereed the way it is played today, Michael Jordan would have averaged 8 to 10 more points per game for his career. It is just that simple.
But Greeny, I do want to say one other thing, though, and I want to give Kevin Durant some love on this one, because I think it gets overlooked when you think about Michael Jordan. Like Michael Jordan, his first couple years, I mean, he was put on the show, dancing, dribbling the ball a lot, scoring points at will, at his own will. But he truly got unlocked in the triangle. And from somebody that has participated in that offense, it was particularly built for guys like Michael Jordan, and you saw Kobe Bryant really his game elevate from it, because they put him in a position where he minimized all of his risk. There was no wasted motion in Michael Jordan's game, and it was unlocked by Phil Jackson. So I just want to give Phil Jackson, Tex Winters, and the Triangle some love there, because it just took Michael Jordan's game to a completely different stratosphere.
Yes, and Jerry, too. Jerry was the one who first saw the genius in what Tex was doing and brought it there. Jay Will, thank you. We'll check back with you as we go. Again, Jay Will.